What's going on, everybody? Welcome on into the Sports Forum's March Madness National Championship show and a little bit of extra stuff here for you guys to wrap things up. Riggs Tamburo, Rudy Reyes, Bryson Owens. Hope everybody is enjoying this one here. Guys, we got a big old game here, the last game of the March Madness tournament. Duke gets upset the other day. Florida fight their way on through to the national championship. So in this one seed Florida, 1 seed Houston. You got Florida coming in minus 110, Houston coming in minus 110. The odds makers did open this game with Florida as a 1.5 point favorite there on Saturday night. But now we're seeing a 50-50 game here, some sharp money, if you would, coming in on Houston at this point. Over under in this game all the way up to 141.5. That opened at 140 there as well. So we'll pull up the article here on sportsformedia.com. But before we do that, Bryson Owens, I know you weren't there, my man, on our Final Four show. So your quick thoughts on this one, not seeing Duke in the final game. How are we feeling?
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer to not see a Cooper Flagg versus Walter Clayton final. I think Clayton's been the best player in this tournament out of the pool of players who've gone on this deep, while Flagg was the best player heading into the tournament. Like, Flagg's going to be the number 1 overall pick. Clayton has just been unbelievable for Florida this entire time. So it's kind of a bummer we don't get to see that matchup. I do think it's interesting. Not a typical national championship game when it comes to college basketball. Like, you have one school who really hasn't been that great of a basketball school since almost the Tim Tebow days. That's about the last time Florida was really consistently good at basketball. And Houston, who's always really good heading into the tournament and always comes up short. So it's kind of interesting to see two schools who aren't known for making these deep March Madness runs, especially as of late. I personally really like Houston in this matchup. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I think Houston has been more impressive to me, largely because that defense has been legit the entire tournament, and that's what won them that game against Duke. I know there was a controversial call on Cooper Flagg late in the game. Maybe if it goes the other way, Duke ends up getting that win. But I think what's not being talked about enough in that game is the fact that Duke, I think, went 1 for 12 to finish the game, shooting the ball. Like, they just could not score to finish that game. And while Houston's offense, it's not going to light you up, they're not going to go off for 80 points very often. If they can get to 72 points, I think they have a real shot to win this thing. Because that defense, you look at who they've played so far, 76 is the most they've given up. Otherwise, they've been pretty locked down the entire time. So I think it's a really interesting matchup. Not one you'll see very often. Maybe not one we ever really see again, depending on how NIL and the transfer portal all works in college basketball. But it's going to be fascinating. It's two very different teams going off against each other.
Rudy, you, my man, were feeling those Blue Devils coming out of the Final Four there. I think you and the rest of the country were feeling that game coming through. Even I said at the end of that show, I think the one team we can count out at this point is the Houston Cougars. Well, did we get slapped with a little bit of our own medicine in that one? How you feeling, my man? Do you have to pick the team? Not that we want your picks yet, but do you pick the team now that took down the team that you picked?
Well, you know what? Sadly, I look at this game, I think to myself, Cooper Flagg had the ability to basically provide a soul-crushing jump shot and missed. That was the clincher in this game. Everything that led up to this was completely just tomfoolery. They couldn't score to save their life. There were a lot of missed opportunities, especially in transition defense. The Cougars, hot and fast, they got Duke had their hands, picked basically with the ball in their hands. They raced up the floor. It was a fabulous game from a Cougar standpoint. Yes, I picked Duke to go all the way, but I also picked Florida. So we'll talk about Florida here in a minute. But the way that Duke had done it, the way that they were leading up to that, Cooper Flagg named Player of the Year. He had a couple other accolades. Would not surprise me to see him go first overall in the NBA draft forthcoming. But the Cougars, you can't say enough about it. Kelvin Sampson, head coach, went on to say that don't sleep on Houston. I think I slept them in a little bit too long. Maybe could have used a cup of Java to wake me up a little bit so I didn't sleep on the Cougars. But, I mean, when you think about the amount of depth that this team has, they're going to match up well against a very strong defensive Big 12 winning Houston Cougars team who's very gritty. But Florida has the size. They have the depth. They're tall. They have trees in the forest. this team will. And by the way, just to set this tone, it's the third meeting between these two teams. Houston holds a 2-0 series lead as they head into this tourney in San Antonio, Texas. So do I like Florida going to this? Yes. Do I think they're going to get their hands basically, clacked by this Big 12 Houston-powered defense? Absolutely. They're going to be, all of them, like white on rice. Florida's going to have to be decisive with the ball, execute accordingly, get inside of the paint, get the fouls, get them called, go to the line, and convert at the stripe. If they can do that, and they can provide the defense they've been doing all season long. People were talking about how people were sleeping on the Duke defense and how the offense was just so good and so on and so forth. Just like we've seen today in the women's, championship game, when you look at South Carolina, basically got whacked by a UConn team who just looked that good. You want to talk about UConn and Paige Buchers and all her contributions and Sarah Strong and all that. The defense will potentially get it closer than the objects in the mirror actually appear for this Florida team. So I think it's going to be a pretty solid matchup. I think the strategy is on both between Sampson and the Florida State head coach, Gators head coach, which just eludes me big time. They're going to have to manage the personnel. They're going to have to recognize when fatigue is setting in, sit those guys in, provide solid substitutions, and ultimately the wear and tear and keeping yourself out of foul trouble for both teams is going to be essential to find out who's going to win. Now, as we see, baseball as a opposite to this is a game of streaks, and I think this is going to be critical for either one of these teams to go on to win the Natty.
Yeah, liking a lot of stuff you're saying there. By the way, just the white on rice reference. Well, that's a mouthful right there. Don't ever get it twisted, guys. Rudy Reyes got you covered when it comes to the nutty puns. So if you ever like those, pay attention, take your notes. But with that said, look at here, my man. You guys see it on the screen from a betting point of view, a few numbers that I think are pretty important here in this game. First one, at the spread numbers, you got Gators coming in 28-11 against the spread this year. Outstanding for sports bettors here. They tend to get you your money back, but the Cougars on the other side, 21-18. They do handle business, but obviously not at the clip that you're getting here with the Gators. Then want to talk about the combined points in this game. This has been a trend throughout March Madness. We saw it a lot in the Final Four, and here we are again. Combined, these two teams score an average of 159.2 points per game, 18.2 more points than the listed total here. Obviously, Houston, I would say they are the reason why this number is getting bumped down a bit. But I got to go ahead and say, guys, I do think it's a little bit sketchy to bring it down 18.2 points. Let's not get it twisted. Houston, they can shoot threes. They got LJ Cryer out there. If this dude stays hot, as he did against Duke, and to be fair, you would think it'd be a lot harder to shoot three-pointers against Duke than it is against Florida. They don't have the size. They don't have the length that Duke had there. So for me, I don't think Houston's scoring is going away here. Also, if you take away Duke, just like Bryson mentioned, kind of going ice cold on their final 12 shots and not really hitting free throws, that number should have gotten blown out of the water on the over-under. So for me, I feel like this number is getting bumped down way too low. Once again, 159.2 on average, now 141.5. Bryson, do you think they've lowered this number a little too much?
I think maybe it is a little too low. I mean, you're asking these two teams to both reach 70 points, which I think is more than reasonable for them. I think that is just giving a lot of credit to the defense that the Houston Cougars have played this entire tournament. These are the totals they've given up so far in this tournament. 67 to Duke, 50 against Tennessee. That was a wild one. Tennessee couldn't get anything against them. 60 against Purdue. They gave up 76 to Gonzaga. That was their biggest on the tournament. And they gave up 40 in the first round to SIUE. So the defense for the Cougars has been legit the entire tournament. I think they're just giving a little bit of respect to that. And, offensively for the Florida Gators, they're about as good as anyone in the country. They were about as good coming into it. They were third in the country in scoring. They're fourth in offensive rating. But if they do not get that three-point shot to fall early, I don't think they're going to be able to get the offense going in the paint. I think the Cougars' physical defense is going to not allow anything consistently in the paint. So I think Florida's going to have to really live or die by that three-point line. That's a scary thing to rely on, especially when the other team is so good all around defensively.
Would you say, though, that they're also Houston's also living by the three-point ball here with LJ Cryer? Because for me, if you take away the three-pointers, they've been living on three-pointers the entire tournament. So for me, I think they're just as much banking on that, Florida and Houston in this game. Like, whoever hits more threes here probably wins this game.
I think one of the differences, and Rudy kind of mentioned it when he was talking earlier, the thing that I like with Houston that can get their offense going a little bit better is they were one of the top three-point shooting teams in terms of percentage, but not in terms of volume. They don't take and make a lot. They just make what they take at a high rate. I think one thing they can rely on in this game is defensively, they take care of the ball really, really well. They don't turn the ball over a lot. And Florida does turn the ball over a decent amount. So if Houston's defense can cause turnovers, get them out and running in fast break, maybe cause some mismatches on the other side, some cross matches, and maybe get a big guy on a small guy in transition, that can help Houston's offense a lot, is if they can just make it so hard for Florida to score on the other side. Now, Florida's playing not settled on defense all night on their side of the floor. So I get what you're saying with the Cougars also maybe living and dying by the three, but I think Houston is more adept because of their defense to get out and run and force mismatches and cross matches on the other side of the floor.
You know, what's really interesting is that the Cougars went on a 9-0 run to end the game with 33 seconds. They went on an 11-1 run in the final 74 seconds. That says a lot about their ability to transitionally get into being able to score on the other side of the ball, right? You say good defense equals to better offense. Well, that could very well be the case. You can see that against Florida. Florida themselves has just been on an absolute tear, especially inside of the paint. So if they can keep it inside of the paint, they can keep it on their side of the court, you're going to find them taking more opportunities. Even if they ditch it out to a perimeter shot or even a three-point shot, they've been able to convert. Now, when you talk about LJ Cryer, what he's done, 26 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 1 steal. That says a lot about his game, his fortitude, his ability to get the ball, divvy that ball up to guys like Emmanuel Sharp, Juwan Roberts. If you can mix and match, as you stated about volume, I think it's about the critical amount of threes that Houston will take. If they take a low amount, I can tell you the accuracy is going to go up higher. So if they stay low on the 3-point shots, that will enable them to get a higher percentage to convert for that ball to fall in. So it's going to be interesting to see what this will look like. Now, you look at Cooper Flagg, you look at Con Knipples, absolutely underrated in my professional opinion. He had 16.7 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal. That says a lot about Con. But these guys playing like, Malawach is a very good example of that. Con was able to feed it in to him. He dunked it. He did everything he could. He's good from the perimeter as well. So we're going to see what these guys have for Florida and what they're able to accomplish against a very stingy, just run-of-the-mill defense. Probably not going to be a part of their game. I think they're really going to get their hands full and more often than not get their hands slapped by Houston's defense against Florida.
Yep, I agree with you there. And I do want to go ahead and point out, guys, once again, taking this back to the betting side of things for me, because if you guys don't know, that's all my job is here, is to go ahead and let these two go at the game, and I'll just go ahead and keep talking about betting. But with that said, I do want to say Houston, they've been slept on twice this season as dogs, and they've won both of those games. And that game against Duke, we talked about it, Rudy and I, in the Final Four show. That was the biggest deficit on any betting line all year for Houston. And not only did they return your money on the cover, but they won the game and they burned everybody else. Vegas said, thank you very much, Houston Cougars, to go ahead and close that one out there. So sleeping on these guys as dogs, I kind of think that's why they took away that 1.5-point favorite here with Florida. As you guys are pointing out, each of these teams have ways to win offensively, ways to win defensively. Will it come down to 1 or 2 players? Will it come down to full groups of players? It's really hard to call this one. So with all that said, I do want to go ahead and just mention one more time my boy Walter Clayton Jr. I know we've already brought him up here to get this thing going, but I said he was the best shooter, said he's been the best playmaker. I think he is the best playmaker in the country. Cooper Flagg, best overall player, but Walter Clayton's just different. I don't know if you guys saw it, but in his little post-game interview there with the coach, this dude is ice cold in the veins, man. He is poised. He is calm. He is quiet. He's got that silent assassin written all over him, and he wasn't celebrating. It was one of those jobs not finished. If you know, you know. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things where I think the dude is on a mission to kill right now. And I don't think there's another player on the floor. As good as LJ is not Walter Clayton Jr. You can say whatever you want, but he's just not. So with all that said, gentlemen, they say that defense wins championships. Well, if that's true, then Houston are going to find a way to win this game. Rudy, when you look, my man, at your money line pick to win the national championship, who you got?
You know what? I can go either way here. I can keep my money in my pocket if I wanted to, and I'd be okay with that. But I mean, this is a national championship. Come on, man. You look at both of these teams. They match up well. They have great personas. They have great personalities. The coach is reflective of how these guys play. I'm taking the money line here. I mean, the number's too good. It's too good not to. If you want to throw a little side money, maybe some pizza slices and throw them to the birds, you could put something, inside of the Cougars' pocket. Hopefully, don't pull them out and try to eat them. But I mean, look, Florida and Houston. I mean, it doesn't get any better in the national championship. But to be honest with you, I didn't pick Houston to be here, but I picked Florida to be here. You say my bracket's busted? Maybe not. Well, maybe it is. I don't know.
Everybody else too, so it's all good.
This game, I'm still taking Florida. I mean, they just have too many trees in the forest. They're able to hammer it down when they need to. They have too many key players, not just role players, but key players. So if you're on the money line, take it. I think that it's going to roll in Florida as we creep closer to tomorrow. That number's going to change, so don't buy into that too quickly. But I think that the spread will become more of a favorite for Florida. So I'm taking Florida.
Bryson, before you give your pick, my man, I want to go ahead and say 58% of people have Florida winning this game outright. 68% of people at the spread, -1. I mean, I don't know what at the spread means. So let's just go ahead and put those two numbers in between. Let's call it right about 63% of people taking Florida to go ahead and win this game. And then the over-under, once again, we'll get to that in a minute, 56% of people are on the over in this game. So are you with the 60-ish% of people and Rudy that are rocking with the Gators?
This one's really tough for me because I've personally been more impressed with the way Houston's played all tournament, largely because when they've needed to, one of the hardest things to do in basketball is when you really need to get a stop late in games and you can just do it without fouling and you can do it consistently and you can literally shut out a team with the best player in the country for minutes at a time. Like, that's really hard to do in basketball. So I've personally been really more impressed with Houston and how they've played in this tournament personally. One thing that does scare me if you're going to be a Houston bettor, and while this isn't something you can quantify, and it's not really something I can pinpoint and say, this is how you measure this thing I'm going to say. It feels like you see these tournaments or you see these playoffs in other sports, and you're just like, oh yeah, this is that guy's tournament. It was all set up for this guy to win it. It felt like it was going to be Cooper Flagg, and now it kind of feels like this is Walter Clayton's tournament to lose. Like, it's set up for him to win. It's set up for him to make a huge statement and climb up draft boards and make a statement like, hey, maybe Walter Clayton's actually the best player in the country. Who knows? So I know that's not really a super scientific and it's not really a super in-depth sports reason to pick a team, but it just feels like Florida has all the momentum. It feels like Walter Clayton is a man possessed and no one can stop him. So as much as I've liked Houston all tournament, and at the end of the game, I know Florida has a guy they can go to and an offense they can run if they need a bucket. I don't know if Houston has that go-to bucket getter. I know you've mentioned Cryer a couple of times, but I don't think he's the same guy like you mentioned as Clayton. So I think I'm going to take Florida. It goes against what I've been saying about Houston's defense this whole time, but it just feels like this is Clayton's tournament to lose at this point.
Rudy, Bryson mentioned the fact that when things get tight, like they say, defense wins championships, they can lock down people, and that's been very impressive for them so far. But to kind of counteract that, I would say Florida's also been a team that have had the lead late, been down late. They find ways to win games as well, but they do it on the other end of the ball. They do it offensively. We talked about in the last show. I said they could be down 8 points with 2 minutes to go, and they're going to win this game. That's just who the Florida Gators are. And like Bryson just pointed out, unless LJ Cryer goes out there and drops 3 3-pointers in a minute if these guys are down 7-8 points. They can't win this game. And so, and then with Florida missing, and I just don't see that happening here. So, Rudy, with that said, would you rather have the Florida offense late in the game or the Houston defense late in the game?
I'm more about the offense and the transitional capabilities that Florida has. You post up a guy inside of the paint, you drop it to him, he'll be able to make things happen, early and often. It's kind of like what Malawach did for Duke. You're going to see that kind of time and time again, especially you get to post him up. Look, he's going to come inside of the play. If you're a perimeter player, you got to be able to rotate over. You can't just stay on one guy, especially when you see him cross rotate. Have a guy, make sure he understands the communication has to be there. So if he rolls out, you got to be able to roll in on him without leaving a man open to drain that three or to hit that jump shot. So, when you look at the Gators, they're 25 and 53 from the field. Auburn, they were not much better, 25 and 57. It's so much about the rebounds, getting to the glass, staying with the glass, staying with the play. And I think Florida has more of a propensity, they've shown all season long, that they can stay with the best of them. And I think it's going to show in rebounds, offensive and defensive rebounds as well, against a very otherwise, stingy Houston defense that likes to pick your pocket when they have the opportunity. I just don't believe they're going to get that opportunity as early as often as they did against Duke, as they're not going to do against Florida. So I think Florida, it has more of an opportunity based on what they provide, their offense and those transitional plays to get them easy buckets on the other end.
Can I
I will give one over here. Yeah.
I just want to offer a different perspective from that question you asked just now. Would you rather have Florida's offense or Houston's defense? I'm going to look at it from the other way. Would I rather have Florida's defense late in games or Houston's offense? Because we know best against best, they're going to kind of cancel each other out. So would I rather have the Florida Gators defense or the Houston Cougars offense late in games? I might take the Florida Gators defense in that scenario. Houston, like we kind of mentioned, they have a tendency to just go cold. And in those games I mentioned with their low scoring outputs, against Purdue, they put up 62 points. They only scored 70 against Duke. Like, they also can go cold offensively. So I think if you're going to look at it from the other way, it might also favor Florida in that respect.
Especially if we're talking 3-point defense, because the 3-point defense for Florida is much better. So I agree with you there completely. Now, gentlemen, with that said, the over-under, once again, 56% of money is on the over here. It's fluctuating anywhere between 140 and about 141.5. Rudy, will you be going to 142 points or more in this game, or does this one stay under?
I'm probably going to take the 142. I'm pretty confident in that. I'll be honest with you. I look at Florida. I look what they've been able to do. They create turnovers. They really know how to again, defense. They pick your pocket. And to your point, Bryson, I think it's really about, is the Florida defense that much better than the Houston Cougars defense? But the Cougar defense has slept. That's why Duke was able to really get out in front of them, at least by halftime. So I think when you look at Florida, the opposite is true. Defense versus the Cougars offense. I think overall, Florida just looks like the slightly better team. Is this going to be an onslaught? Well, no. It's going to be a 3-point swing either way, because these teams just mirror each other in so many variety of ways defensively. Houston a little bit more on the stinty side. They can get inside of you, especially if you allow them to, if you don't pass the ball with any type of efficiency, they're going to knock that thing out of the air and transition them into offense immediately. So don't sleep on the Cougars. I'm not sleeping on the Cougars, maybe taking a nap here and there, but I'm taking Florida at that 1.5 point slide.
And the over in this game for Rudy, guys, so 142 points or more. Bryson Owens, you going to join him on the over here?
Yeah, I think I am going to join him on the over. In this tournament so far, the Houston Cougars defense has allowed 140 or less points in 4 of their 5 games. So that trend would say that they would hit the under in this one. The only reason I'm going to counter that is, on the other side, every single game the Florida Gators have played in, it's gone at least 150 points. So the Gators, every game they play in, because the other teams are scoring on Florida's defense, especially early in games, pretty easily. Like, a couple times this tournament, they've gone into halftime either losing or it's a really close game. So I think early in the game, Houston's offense is going to be able to do enough to kind of keep that pace going. And then I think Florida is going to be the one that kind of takes it over the top there for that over. So I'm with Rudy on the over for that one.
Well, gentlemen, this worked out well because consensus picks here for the Sports Forum on our article. We got Florida taking this one home. Obviously, Florida at the pick'em spread here, the over 140 at the time of this article. We'll go ahead and bump that up to 141, but try to find it there as close to 140 as you can. Final score prediction for me, 74-70. Bryson, your exact score, what you got for them?
I'll go with 77 Florida, 71 Houston.
Mr. Reyes.
I'm going to take 74 Florida, 71 Houston.
All right.
That is my 3 points swing there.
We talking game-winning bucket or missed three?
Game winner from 3 for Florida.
Going to get any flashbacks there.
They shot a really good percentage all season long. I don't see why they should stop now.
Fair enough. All right, guys, there you go. My 74-70 here is more of I do think that Florida go ahead and bangs the 3, and then all of a sudden LJ Cryer finally misses the 3. We get a foul. Who knows what's going to happen? And they kind of find a way to just barely make this one unreachable as we saw there in the previous game. So good luck to you guys in the national championship game. Once again, that one going down on Monday night. So enjoy that game there. We're rocking with the Gators to go ahead and chomp their way to a national championship.